Hi there, Camshaft here. I'm going to hopefully teach you guys how to create a course. So if you're not sure about the game and your reservations about the editor and all that stuff, quite frankly, this is pretty easy stuff. My background with Motocross Madness, in a nutshell, helps with the terrain deformation of this game. So let's get jumping into the tutorial here, and don't mind me if it's a little wonky here. It's my first time doing a tutorial, so hopefully it'll help you guys out. So you go into the editor, create course, and you click through and select the theme that you want. The theme's not terribly important at the very beginning, just because you can change this and swap this out later. So I'm just going to pick rule for this time, and this is where a decision you're going to have to make. If you're going to let the game create the course for you, that means all the holes and everything else, that's fantastic. Let the course generator generate stuff for you, and it's a good start. After that, you probably want to go in, tweak a few things. So what I like to do is, you have to make a decision. Is it a replica course, or is it a, hey, I'm just going to make a course? So this time here, it's just going to be make a course. And you can tweak these settings to your liking. I don't like too many trees, but you guys can tweak that the way you want. And we're going to hit next. We're going to keep this simple. We're just going to do 9 holes. And we'll let this thing create 9 holes basically for us. And I'm going to show you guys how to do elevations and things like that. And hopefully it will solidify. Maybe I'll do another video after this on how to take a real course and replicate it in the golf club. So the editor in here is actually pretty cool, but here what I'm going to do is just do a test hills course, and hopefully we can do a couple things. So the game engine starts doing this auto jiggery placement of the holes, and this stuff is not written in stone. It's just a suggestion. So what we're going to do is go down to edit holes, and I'm using an Xbox 360 controller, which I recommend also. Hopefully there'll be an Xbox One controller for a set of drivers for Windows and Windows 7 and all that. But for this tutorial, I'm not using the keyboard at all. Swan Hills is a course that I created completely with the controller. Some of you guys may go, oh, yuck. I hate controllers, but you can see. So anyways, what I'm doing is I'm using the right thumbstick to sort of move around, and the left stick to kind of go around. It's almost like a first-person shooter to some level, for those of you that probably use a first-person shooter. So as you can see, it dropped in some lakes, it dropped in the holes, tee boxes, I won't say lakes, we'll call them ponds, but it scattered them in a random kind of way. But what I'll show you guys is that you're probably going to go, well, I don't want this thing generating the course for me. Well, I'll show you an example of how easy it is to move something or move the placement of a hole, because a lot of people are struggling with this that I noticed in the forums. What you want to do is use the triggers, not the buttons on the controller. So what you do is you use the right trigger to zoom in, and I'm just going to scroll over top of the different things, but you can see in the upper left it says number 1 fairway, but if I get closer to the hole it says green, and if you go up here it'll go zoom in here a little bit, tee box. So you can move these individually, but all the options change depending on where your cursor placement is. So if you move here, you'll have different options than if you are here, and so on. So what I'm going to do is zoom out. I'm going to grab the hole and just move it, just to show you guys what happens there. So make sure you're not on the tee box or the green, but in the middle. But you don't want to be on this number 1 thing either, because that's your break point. So you want to be in the middle here, and I'm going to grab the hole, the entire hole. So you use the right bumpers or the right buttons, or the top bumpers, or the right buttons and left buttons at the top. So that moves the selection, not the triggers, but the buttons. And I'm going to say move, but not. I'm going to move hole, not move the entire thing. So if I do move hole, it'll grab the entire hole, and I can move it where I want. So if I want hole number 1 here, you can do it here. And then you can use the D-pad to rotate the hole. So if you say, well, I don't want it there, but I want to squeeze it in here right beside hole number 2, and then you hit the A button, it'll drop it there, move the trees around, move everything around for you. So you can move things around the way you want. You select the hole, you make sure you're on the green, and then you go move. And then you move the green where you want. So as you can see, moving stuff around after the fact is pretty cool. So a lot of people have been asking, well, you know, how do you move stuff around, and is it this or that? Like an example, these bunkers. These bunkers are put in there automatically. They're not objects. So the bunkers can be auto-generated or individual objects, so you can delete them later. I wish the developers would make the auto-generated bunkers that you can select them and delete them, basically, but you can't at this point. So from what I'm able to see, this might make a liar out of me, but it doesn't seem that way. So what you have to do is reduce the hazard, basically, to 0, to none, and you can see the bunkers go away on the fairway. And you can adjust the amount of bunkers on the green and things like that. So I'm going to teach people how to do elevations here, because they looked at the Swan Hills video and they went, oh, how the hell did you do that? It's not that hard. But what you have to figure out is the layout of your course, and figure out and say, well, do I want it to be a big hill or what? So what we're going to do here is we're going to make a hill that'll touch half of number 4, the start of number 1, and partial of number 2, and the entire number 3. So one big hill right about there. I'm going around with the controller. So what you want is you want Sculpt Landscape. Hit the triggers at the top, not the triggers, sorry, the buttons. And you're going to select a brush. And what you want is, you want raise, not flatten. Flatten we're going to use later. We want raise. And you're going to take a brush that basically has a soft, rigid edge. And you select that brush that you want, and you hit the top of the D-pad, and that will increase the brush size. So as I said, I want this to be right about there. But watch the terrain. Nothing's going to happen, but this is the encompassing part of it that I want the elevation to be. Now, you don't want to go too crazy with the elevation, because things get a little impossible, but all right, so once you've selected the brush, you hit the right bumper, or the right button on the Xbox controller. And the best way to see how much of it's doing is you keep pressing it until you get a good elevation right about there. So you can see all the way around, it's getting rid of some of the water, because the game engine has water only generating at the lower portions of the course. So I'm going to hit the A button to say, yes, I want that, but you can see the trees all got put back in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit the B button to back out of the brushes, and I'm going to go flatten. So this allows you to go in here and tweak some of the hills. So if you want to say, well, okay, on hole number 4, I'm going to zoom in here, not too much. But there's the tee box. So you say, well, on hole number 4, there's a bit of a hill, but I want the hill to be a little bit more, or a hill in the middle. So I'm going to put the cursor in the middle and go to Sculpt Landscape. Sculpt Landscape's your friend here. And you want raise again, and you want to select the brush. I like to select a softer brush, just to get more of a slope effect, if you will. And then you hit the A button, and that'll pop in the hill there. So I'm going to exit out, and we're going to play this hole just to see what it looks like, to see if it's too much or whatever. So in here you can actually set your cursor and hit the Y button, and you just play the hole that you're on, basically. So you can see that hill that I made over there, and you can say, well, let's try it. Go back and forth a couple times, and if you take a swing at the driver, you may go, well, oh, hey, look at that, I'm going to land right on top of the hill, that's what I want, or whichever, I want to make that a little higher, or that sort of thing. So as you can see, the game is really well designed so that you end up with the right elevation for some of this stuff, that if you use a club that's too high, you'll end up past the hole and stuff like that. But this is pretty heavy-duty, lengthy hole here. So, all right, have a look here. So it made automatically a par 5 out of this thing. So I'm going to exit out of here, and I'm going to go basically edit course. And people are wondering, like, well, how do you make even crazier slopes? So what we're going to do is we're going to take hole number 3 here, And we're going to boost that one up more, basically. So, it'll increase the elevation, rather. So I'm going to do raise again. But we're going to use this slopey brush here. And I'm hitting the D-pad to increase and decrease the whole thing. So I'm going to increase the height here. And we're going to see if we can play this hole and see what happens on what I just did there. I mean, you can go crazy with this thing, and that's not a bad challenging hole, but you probably want to flatten all that out. So what you want is, go back to the editor, and like I said, this is my first tutorial, so I may not be the most charming individual, like our good friend John at HB, that has the radio voice. But in any case, I'll do my best to make sure that everybody here understands and gets the whole thing. So here, we're going to make this sort of more flat, if you will. So I'm going to take a brush with softer edges. I'm a big fan of it because I want the edges to be nice and tapered off, not this cliff on both sides every time. But I'm going to raise this a little bit, make this a bit of a challenge. Hit the A button, and you hear that thumping sound. That's almost like a commitment button. So what you do here is you keep moving forward slowly, and it'll raise that terrain. And what I like to do is increase that brush size a little bit so that you get that variety every time. And the way this works, this is a bit of a trick here, but the way you can flatten out a hill, so let's say we're going to take this green, we're going to move it back. I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to take this key box here, I'm going to move it back, I'm going to move it over here so that we get a bit of some slope variance, if you will. So as it stands right now, that slope is pretty nasty. So what you want to do is flatten the tee box first of all. But you don't want to have it too flat, but that'll make it so it's playable nice and level. But as we move forward, you can see there's a bunch of bumps up ahead there. You can see the whole thing. So what I want to do is make it nice and smooth all the way up. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to move forward, and you can see the hill slowly deforming. And then I'm going to move up a little bit until the whole thing starts raising, and then flatten it, hitting the button. Slowly, and you can see the hill, but I wait till at least I start seeing the brush go up, like here. And then it goes up a bit more, like this. So, a bit more. So you can see there's a bit of a climb there. So what I'm going to do is play the hole and see if it's to my satisfaction. So you can see there, nice slope going all the way up, and you can play with that. But you can see the terrain gradually goes up, and you can play with that stuff. So let's say I want to make the green even higher. So I'm going to make the green even higher. So I'm going to exit out of here, go back to the editor, and it's rinse and repeat. It's a lot of tweaking, but in the end, I think the whole thing's worth it. So what I'm going to do is just elevate the entire green here with a Sculpt Landscape, raise terrain, take a nice brush. I'm going to use the brush maybe with a softer edge so that the edges they're not as harsh. So here, you're better off to go down to a bird's eye level, not bird's eye, that's way up there, but ground level, and then increase it by hitting the right trigger. And then you can increase the size of the brush, so you can say, well, I'm going to make that just a bit higher. Not crazy high, but just a bit higher. And then you hit the A button to commit. But you can always undo. You hit the X button, which is the blue button, to undo. So the devs did a good job putting an undo button, because we all know we can all screw up here. But let's see how this hole plays. So you can play hole. Then we go back, and you can see the whole thing's right on a hill a little bit. So what we're going to do is just take a shot. You can cut over. You hit the B button to get the overview, so I'm going to club up one. And take a shot. I quite suck at this. I'm a better golf course creator than a player. I actually suck in real life too, but I enjoy it. I enjoy this sport a lot. Alright, so this is pretty good. So we can move this whole thing back, but it won't move the terrain. That's the only crappy part about it. I wish they would have a thing where you move, it would ask you, do you want to move the terrain also, and then move the whole thing back. But it doesn't happen right now. The developers are still working on this, I mean, let's face it. So, at the end of the day, making elevations isn't that bad, and I just missed that. I suck. So I'll keep doing these small tutorials. At this point here, this is a very introductory, making elevations, but you can build on elevations even more. So if this is the elevation that we did. Well, let's say we want to make this even higher, kind of like a mini mountain, if you will. So we'll go back to the editor, so that if we go from hole number 3 to 4, that you're basically on a hill. So what we're going to do is zoom in over here. But you can see you end up, when you're done hole number 3, you end up going down a hill here. So what we're going to do is level the ground. So this is where the flatten brush comes in really handy. So what we do here is we're going to do this, and we're going to make this pretty big here. We don't want it affecting things too much, but we're going to move a little bit at a time. So we're going to just move forward a little bit, and what it does is it flattens out the land so that everything's the same height as that green. And then we're going to do this in stages. So everything's kind of like on a hill. So I want to use a softer brush here. This is too harsh. So a little bit there. We're going to zoom out a little bit. You get a whole thing, but you move forward a little bit, because if you move too much, you end up down the hill and your elevation's not the same. So what you want to do is keep going with this hill. And what you do is you sort of try to flatten things out so it looks natural a little bit. And then you play with the brushes to move things around. But let's say I want to make it, the tee box, even higher, or the entire hole up on a higher slope. So you keep moving forward on the fairway here. Move forward, and then you keep increasing the brush size, because you want the whole terrain to be one bigger. See that right there, it went lower, so I got to go back here and move forward. So here, I'm going to move back and go here on 4. So it's the same level as 3. And then you got to get over this hill. So let's say we're going to make a little challenge here and lower this part. So at the end of the day, it's not that hard. Just go here, raise. And you don't want a brush that looks like that. You want a sort of a oval type of brush. Or something a little more streamlined, if you will. Let's see, this is as close as it can get right here. And what you do is you can move around, and you can say, well, over here, you can rotate the brush. And as you're playing, you can have maybe a dip before the hill to challenge things. So you just hit the trigger. But as you can see, the edge there is just too harsh in my opinion. So you want a nice slope there. So you basically go to flatten and use maybe the same brush. But what you can do is you start at the bottom. As you can see, it's sort of, I'm going to make this a little smaller, but I'm going to move up until it starts going up the hill a little bit at a time. No, I'm going to use a softer brush here, actually. And maybe something like this to give it some variety. I'm going to rotate this thing a little bit so that you end up just tapering that hill a little bit at a time. So go once, hit the button, and then you move up until the brush starts going up. You'll see it moving up a little bit, like this. And then you move forward and up a little bit more. So as you can see here, I'm going to go back to the play menu, play the hole. You can see that there's that dip, but it's not this big cliff falling out. So if your ball gets stuck in there, it's not too bad. You can do the same with the hill up ahead. So you can take your drive and possibly land on top of the hill if you want. And I'm in the rough, but you guys get the idea. So it's a lot of work. It's not just instant click, click, click. I think the creators that are going to make a difference in this game are the ones that are going to meticulously take the time to do certain things. So, all right, guys, I hope this helped, and we'll talk to you soon.